Coming up, do Disney influencers really influence guests? Welcome to the SeeWDW Near and Far podcast, where we explore perspectives of the Walt Disney World Resort from 10 to 1,000 miles away. I am Mike, the far in this equation.
And I'm John, fairly near.
All right. Today, we are going to talk about Disney influencers and how do they, do they still influence guests to come to the parks, to buy, to purchase, to, just as influencers, as Disney thinks that influencers, influence your potential guests, and not just influencers, do other people, marketers and people like that still think that influencers are weighing it, like putting some weight to guest decisions. As someone that has a social media marketing degree, myself, I am not so sure anymore. Things are changing, and I think you agree with that, right, John?
I do, and I just want to put it out there quick that we were supposed to do Rock and Roller Coaster today. Somebody wasn't prepared. But.
That's right. That was me. And I'll admit to that. I was going to say that, but then I started talking about this. We were going to talk about the everything about Rock and Roller Coaster today. That will be next week.
One other thing I'll get out of the way too is, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, but part of the do influencers influence you anymore? Part of that, for me at least, is jealousy. Like, I'm also, I have, between my two Instagram accounts, 250,000 followers, reach millions of people a month, and I'm not an influencer because I don't really go on my account. I'm sure I could, try to find an angle, like dress up in some kind of memorable costume and get animated and stuff. And maybe I should, but I just don't really feel like doing that. And so I am a little bit jealous when I get to see all those people getting free stuff and free trips. But I have to tell you that I think a lot of other people are too, because I see a lot of negativity on, the Disney news sites, like, the Disney food blog, that kind of thing. When there's a lot of people that kind of resent influencers, they say they shouldn't be allowed to be at the parks, they shouldn't be allowed to live stream, blah, blah, blah. I have to say, I've gotten to the point where I rarely use my gimbal anymore. And I like to use my gimbal, but the looks I get from people, like the guests look downright angry. Like, I was walking through Tomorrowland and I was trying to do a hyperlapse video going towards the Astro Orbiters. I had people that would not move an inch. I was walking so slow and the park was not crowded. They walked right at me, and man, the look they gave me as to get the heck out. You know what I mean? Like, they were just,
I do.
I know there has been a lot of fights breaking out at Disney. I literally felt like one of the people looked at me like they were this close that they wanted to just shove me out of the way. Again, I see it at the parks. I literally tend to hold my camera more than gimbals anymore. And so I can't say I agree with that, because I've been recording parks for years before there was social media. So for me, it's just a weird obsession. It's not necessarily that I want to be famous or get rich. Or matter of fact, I absolutely have no interest in that. Like I'm more of a shy person. Like I'm not. This is probably the only place anyone ever sees me, and I like to keep it small in the corner of the screen. But anyway, I also wanted to mention too, like um, I actually went to media events, and I went as a stand-in for another um, website slash account slash whatever that I used to help them out, and I would stand in for them when they couldn't be here. And I won't mention who it is; they're very good people and stuff. But one of the one of uh, some of the resentment that I built up over the years was though I reach my guess would be at least 30 to 40 times the people that they do, like audience wise, and I've never been invited. And it just kind of, so again, there is sour grapes there, but I'm not going to talk bad about any of them because again, I'm just jealous. So I don't want to get into all that, but I can tell you though, I'll give you a little bit of experience, what they allow you to do at some of these things. I went to one at Hollywood Studios once, and I think this is before Galaxy's Edge, and we had it was a Star Wars tour they were trying to push. So I got to go on this special Star Wars tour. They gave us lunch. They gave us $50 in gift cards for more food if we wanted it. Then they had a Star Wars dessert party and special viewing area for the fireworks. And I forget how many. I had at least 6 fast passes put on my day pass in the card, and I could bring a guest too, which I brought my daughter later on, and we went on Slinky Dash a bunch of times in a row. Like this was before a lightning lane, so having a fast pass meant you walked right on. Like I literally just walked on every ride I wanted to. I got gift cards. I got free food. Um, it's a pretty cool thing. And at that time, I got to march with the First Order too. So it's like the media events are pretty darn cool for a media person. Like I feel like I really got spoiled there. And I'm literally sitting there eating lunch and I'm looking around and every big name you can think of is right there with me, like all the big Disney people and stuff. So, I was a little starstruck from it. So, and again, I still like all those guys and none of this is anything against them. But the reason that I tend to resent it more than like it anymore is the amount of stuff that they give them. It made me think, how on earth could I ever say that this tour isn't worth the money? I'm like, man, they gave me all this stuff. They treated me like royalty. And I'm like, that is just so nice of them. And again, there's like a fine line between that and reality. And I think part of that you can really see is remember the Galactic Star Cruiser.
I was just going to mention that, John.
And
Absolutely.
again, I had nothing to do with that. I stopped helping out that site a long time ago. They did go to the Galactic Star Cruiser and everything. And honestly, they're one of the few sites that is honest. They're nice, but honest. They're not going to lie. So I'm surprised they keep getting invited back. But almost all of it was a weird positive thing, especially the ones that were allowed to stay there. I remember the clips. They're literally Ray comes out and they're literally screaming, "Oh, wow!" Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I'm a bad person for. I'm not a good fit for the Star Cruiser, but to me it looked cringy and not that impressive. And I'm like, if I was there, I'd probably be in the back thinking, how much is this? Like I wouldn't be yelling, yay. But again, that's why I'll never be invited. But I just think, but things like that though, imagine if you were told how great the Star Cruiser was and $5,000 is a lot of money to you, but you do it and it just didn't quite live up to what you thought, And actually, I have a real example of this. And again, I'm sure he'll never listen to this, but I watched a video once with Paging Mr. Morrow, who I've met many times. He actually knows who I am. I tested him. I was like, he follows me. I've met him many times over the years. Anyway, he had dinner at Space 220, and he got the bone-in T-bone, and it cost like $12 extra because it was a prefix menu. But he said it was so good that he had to. He paid the extra, and it was so worth it. And I watched, and I'm like, man, I want that now, because he's good at his job, Like, you watch him, and you're like, man, I want that. So my family and I went there when it was fairly new, and I ended up getting what Paging Mr. Morrow got for the extra money too. And I have to say, maybe they made it better for him, which is another thing that Disney tends to do. Like, they're top notch when it comes to media day, and then they kind of go down. But I did not enjoy my steak at all. I would never get that again, regardless of the extra $12. I was like, that was not good at all. Like, it just wasn't. And that kind of disappointed me a little bit. And
let me say something real quick about that, though. Nate was in the restaurant business for many years. I mean, that's all he's ever done besides social media. So, and I've heard him even at Disney, where he gets a lot of the attention, from Disney. I've heard him actually give negative, and for him, negative isn't like negative where you and I go to the
he
parks.
Doesn't like it that much.
Yeah, he's like, well, I don't like it. Maybe next time, something like that, or it's something like that. He tries to put as positive a spin on as possible, and I understand that. That's who he is. That's genuinely who he is.
Here's the other problem, though. I was at the Tron booth thing or whatever, and I told you about I got the beef dumplings or something like that. They were dried out, super salty. They tasted funny. The noodle was stuck to the paper dish. The service was terrible. And then I saw all the media people were there. They got free everything, and I heard them say how great that was. And I'm like, my experience was so much different. Like, I looked at their coverage, and I'm like, I don't remember which one it was. One of the big theme park this or review that something. But they were like, oh, here's all the food available at the new Tron booth, and it looked perfect. It looked great, and So I've had a lot of that, especially recently, where my experience is not what I'm being told here, and that may not be their fault. Again,
right?
For me, when they had the media there, they probably had top of the line chefs in.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah,
it was great. And then like a week later, when I went in the Space 220. They had the guy who just started cooking yesterday, and I don't know, they just trained him. He's new. So again, but my thing is, I don't know about you, but I feel like a lot of people are beginning to, at the very least, if I see one of these influencers, if they show me something that I already would like, that's great. If they try to convince me that something's good, I'm not going to necessarily buy that anymore. So again, to me, that makes simply showing you something and letting you decide is about as good as they're going to get for me anymore. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Yeah.
Again, like when I see Nate eating something good, I believe it's good. But depending on the circumstance, I'm going to be a little suspect where, they pulled out the top chef to make sure his meal is perfect. And that's smart of them. But that's what I think is happening, though, that they're getting.
From a marketing standpoint, though, it isn't smart, because what they do is they influence people to go there. So, for example, I remember when you did that. I don't think you ever went back to Space 220 after that, did you?
I did. Yeah.
And
I wanted
to
love it too. I love the idea of it, but
I think it's a great concept. But if you're not the only person, like I've heard other people, other influencers that are honest about the situation, tell the truth about their experience, and it wasn't that great. It's been hit or miss. Like some people, it's been great. Other people, not so much. So maybe it just depends on who the influencer is, how big they are, if they know they're coming, and so on and so forth.
What you have to remember, though, too, is imagine if it's your job, meaning, if Disney was mad at you, a huge part of your income and job could disappear. It's like,
right.
That's scary. And again, I don't blame anybody, but it just, they're getting like that with everything, not just influencers. Like you're starting to not be able to believe ratings on movies and all this stuff. It's like everything is just so convoluted. It's like I used to like to look at like the ratings of a movie, and I'm like, if it gets a 90%, I'm sure I'm gonna like it. I'm not that special, I'm just a regular guy. I'm gonna like it too. I find that to not be the case anymore. Half the time it's the opposite. I see something low rated and I'm like, wait a minute, I love that movie. And then I see something that got a 90 and I'm like, I couldn't even stand to watch that for 20 minutes. And I'm like, what are these ratings based on? So again, stuff like that is, and it may not have happened yet, but the reason that I think about this a lot is companies pay influencers to get people to do stuff. And for example, for an example that didn't work was when they gave that Dylan Mulvaney his own can for Bud Light.
Yeah,
that did not work at all. But again, I feel like that's just the basic not understanding of marketing people. They're like, if a person has millions of followers and they tell you to do something, you're going to do it. I mean, maybe there are people that do, but I just don't know any. I personally don't know anybody who does things that somebody tells them on their phone, like a influencer says, buy this. And they're like, yes, I'm going to buy that. It's like, so again, it is good to pay influencers to show something, like if there's a new product, say for me, there's like a new camera. If an influencer shows me a video on a coaster, this new camera that's great, I'm going to look into that camera, and they just caught somebody's eye that's going to investigate and possibly buy that. But I wouldn't buy it just because they told me to. I wouldn't say, here's a brand new thingamajig, you buy it. It's like, nah, I still need more. But again, I just would love to see from a marketing point of view, you pay people a certain amount of money to post about your product or service or whatever, and how often are you getting your money's worth out of that anymore? And again, when it comes to Disney, I'm really not sure. Speaking of that, if you want to push anything and pay somebody with a lot of followers.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to mention about the go back to the Star Cruiser, what you said about it. I think that was a seminal moment in this whole thing. You know what I mean? I really believe that was where some of this tide started turning, because people at that point, as expensive as it is, and this is strange, but I even remember thinking it myself, as expensive as that Star Cruiser thing was, people started to see a separation between them and the influencers. Like most people that watch the influencers, they can't afford that, that trip, and maybe they could afford, even if they could afford it, they wouldn't want to take that kind of money to do something like that. And they actually probably realized that most likely most of those influencers wouldn't have been able to afford it themselves. And so if you look at the experience that they had, do you really trust it at that point? I mean, how bought out would you feel if someone sent you on a $5,000 trip? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you got to be thankful for that. That would just be downright rude to be like, oh, it was terrible,
Exactly.
So that's just so hard to do. But I know people like the Diz Unplugged. I remember them saying they will not review it until they pay for it themselves and go.
Right.
So, and again, not everybody can do that. I wouldn't have been able to say, oh, I'll pay my own 5,000 just so I can make $100 on social media to do it. It's like, no, that's not going to happen. So in that case, Disney was between a rock and a hard place too, and the influencers. It's like, do you want to say it or not? If it is the next big thing, that could be worth a lot to them.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, speaking of that too, I wanted to mention the most recent one. And again, I this is where I'm glad that I don't get invited to this kind of thing, because I probably would have turned this one down. But Disney flew a bunch of influencers out to New Orleans, and it looks like the highlight of the trip was like going on a boat, and then they met Tiana, and I'm like, don't they do that in the parks already? Like, I'm like, that's just, they flew them all the way out there to show them how they're going to make the ride authentic or something and everything. And I appreciate authenticity, and I appreciate that they do all that, but it's weird though. Like, what? I looked at the posts from a couple of the influencers, and I scratched my head, and I thought, what's Disney trying to get out of this exactly? Because regardless of what they did or didn't do to research the ride, when I ride the ride, I'll know if I like it or not, if it's good or not. I'm not gonna say, well, they did send people to New Orleans. That's just, again, I don't see, and I noticed a lot of the posts, they don't get much traction either. And that's what I was going to say, as someone who stood in for somebody for a while, I actually turned some of the stuff down because it was so cringy and awkward that I'm like, I don't want to do that. There's no point in even doing it at all. Like I opened up the Riviera, and again, I was there with all the big people, the most popular Disney people, and all the professionals, and they're on their laptops and doing this and that. And again, it was a pretty cool thing to see the Riviera, but like the opening ceremonies they have and stuff, they're downright cringy. They're not, if you post that kind of stuff online, there's probably about 200 Disney obsessed fans that want to see every single thing they can, but any normal person who likes Disney is going to be like, this isn't talent showing me anything. You know what I mean? They just continue on, and you can see that by the numbers. So that's not a guess. The numbers point that out, and I've been watching for years. So I've made sure to keep an eye on that stuff, because again, if there's no point to it, there is certain things that I would be hard pressed to say yes to. Like, imagine I'm going to take off of work and go to New Orleans to ride on a airboat and meet Tiana and stuff, and it's like, I'm sure it's a cool experience to live it, but I don't think anyone else is going to be that excited about it to watch my pictures from it. So again, maybe I'm wrong, but I find that to be one of those weird things that Disney does that I question. I think I saw some people questioning, and again, I don't go this far, but Disney's firing people all over the place, and yet they have money for weird stuff that really doesn't do anything for them. It's like, yeah, I don't know.
I mean, from a marketing standpoint, a lot of times when you do something that grandiose, it's like, it's almost like you're worried that whatever you're trying to pitch or whatever campaign you're launching, if you're doing that at the beginning of the campaign, and this is the beginning of the campaign for Tiana's Bayou Adventure, that's exactly what it is. And I'll tell you how I know it's the beginning of the campaign. It's the beginning because they just shut down Splash Mountain in Disneyland.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
And so that's why this has happened this week, to deflect some of the negative attention that some of the Disneyland stuff was casting, with fans and whatnot. But the other Yeah, I don't think it did either. And I think what they're trying to do, and this isn't a reflection of the ride. I don't know what the ride's going to be like. I'm going to ride it. I want to know what it's going to be like. I hope it's great. I really do.
I
But
hope so too. But unfortunately, it's going to have to be even better than just a good
exactly,
ride because of
exactly.
it took away something so many people liked that it's going to be judged harshly
Yes.
against what people grew up
Yeah.
with and loved for the past 30 years. So
And I think that's why I think they did this because it's a very huge, like very high bar that they have now for this. And I don't think that I'm wondering if they think they're not up to it
I wish they'd
because,
spend the money on the ride and not showing me that
yeah,
somebody got flown to Louisiana and they're taking a picture with Tiana. It's like I could do that at the Magic Kingdom. I don't even need to go to and again, I if they're cutting corners on this stuff, that's going to be upsetting. You know,
if the ride is great and if it's going to be great, it'll speak for itself, right? I mean, if it's a great ride, the attention that will get will be like, you'll see them. They'll be like, see, we told you Disney could do this, and it'll be all over social media, and it'll be an instant hit. The ride will speak for itself. The fact that they're pushing this hard tells me I don't know that that's going to happen. It makes me worried that this attraction is facing a lot of budget cuts coming up, and they're making up for it by budget cuts. It's going to be huge budget cuts because they're spending thousands of dollars flying influencers to New Orleans and like paying for them to do all these things, these expensive food experiences.
When they go out,
all
there,
this
that's going
stuff.
to be all expenses. You're not going to pay for anything.
And this isn't the end of it. They're going to continue to do this. There's going to be a full media blitz throughout the year until that attraction is built, and it'll be built first in Walt Disney World. And this blitz will be like nonstop. You're going to see this stuff over the next year. It'll happen in bits and pieces here and there, but it's going to continue. At some point, they'll do something else probably in New Orleans. And say,
in stark contrast, Universal's not doing any weird, cringy
They're
stuff
not.
to promote Epic Universe, and I can't tell you how excited I am for it. And,
exactly.
And I literally watch YouTube videos that just look at reconstructs overhead footage and talk about what's coming and what they're doing, and I'm literally glued to it, just looking at static pictures and hearing somebody talk about it. I'm like,
exactly.
Wow, I am just
and what are they? What are they creating there? They're creating demand.
That costs Universal nothing.
It's scarcity, though.
They're
not talking about it. They're not doing much of anything. The news is scarce and it's creating demand. And so what else does Universal tease and use scarcity to create demand? Every year. That is Halloween Horror Nights. They have one house even announced at this point, and that's it.
Everybody's squirming like, what else?
Everyone's like, what else are they gonna what? And then they're throwing out hints, and everyone's like, well, I know what that is, and they're guessing and they're talking.
Fly everyone to influencer, or fly the influencers to Transylvania and get the picture with exactly the castle. Everybody be scratching their heads like, what house?
I mean, the Phantom of the Opera is probably playing somewhere, and that's the speculation, right? So they should fly them to a performance of that or something.
Universal does do stuff for, invite people out and stuff too, but they just seem much more limited with it. Like they're just not. And again, Disney always has to do everything so weird. I feel like they do a lot of stuff like that. Just awkward,
You're right. It's very awkward. And
a good analogy for Disney would be, you ever watch Family Guy?
Yeah.
That Carter, the rich guy, Lois's dad. Like I feel like that's like Disney. He thinks he's doing the right thing all the time, but he's just some rich guy that's so out of touch that he everything he says is awkward and weird. Like, oh, don't say that. It's like, I feel like somehow Disney ends up with that same kind of feel
I
at the
just
end. I'm like, oh, Disney, why are you always doing this stuff?
I feel like, at one point Disney had a certain crowd and like a certain type of person that they marketed to. And at this point, they're trying to transition to the younger generation. And I even think the younger generation is starting to transition away from some of these influencers, and I think that the younger generation thinks so quickly and changes so frequently with with their tastes and everything
Well,
because of it being the YouTube thing that I think, like, say, Tim Tracker, for example, or someone like that, they're not going to have the same influence over a lot of those people that they might have in the past, particularly given the fact that Tim Tracker and his wife now have kids and they're more of a family channel. So those people will probably abandon them over somebody else, that dances in front of a castle or
I have
something,
to say, I know you have to try to appease the younger people, but
Yeah.
the younger people are so non-committed that it is
At this
just
point,
like
yeah.
literally I can imagine them saying we want Tiana and then a month later being like we're bored of Tiana, what else you got? It's like
Yeah.
we just spent a year to make you happy and you were like what else you got? I'm bored of that too, I'm not even gonna go. It's like that's the people you're dealing with. Unfortunately, they're not that loyal and they're not that their attention span's very short. So again,
Yeah, and that's not
I
just
wouldn't take
limited
it
to
too
this current.
right.
That's not just this current generation. Like, that's when you're younger. I mean, you jump a lot faster to different things, and I mean, so if you think about it, you like to bring up Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway at first was like hours long to get into because it was the latest and greatest. And at Disney World now it's like at peak times, probably like a 45-minute wait. And,
Yeah,
at lower times, it's almost a walk on.
if it wasn't for Lightning Lane, it would always be a walk on.
Right. Yeah, you're right. So
Because when people buy Lightning Lane for Hollywood Studios, what are you going to use it for? There's only
right.
4 rides. It's going to come up. So it artificially increases the wait for that, where I don't think it would. I'm pretty sure it'd be a walk on already without that.
Yeah. And its position in the park helps it as well because it's the first thing you come to. Most people come to. It's like the weenie of the park with the Chinese theater and everything, and you walk up to it. In Disneyland, it's a different story. The attraction is basically brand new, and from what I understand, the wait times were way less typically than what they were for Disney World. And I think it's so bad that they might have taken the virtual queue off of that thing already, right?
Yeah, that didn't last long at all.
And like people were stealing stuff out of the queue line, and it's like, it's just weird stuff going on there. So, I mean, think about how quick they were to respond to that attraction. Like, it was new, then it was old all of a sudden, and like that quick.
I can tell you the Epcot changes are feeling just like that too. Because
I would agree with you there.
I was just there again yesterday, and the parts that are outside of the construction walls, they feel old and beat up and just not great. And then the whole Connections Cafe part and all that, I walked by it again, and I was like, "That's an airport cafeteria if I ever saw it." There's a couple of Epcot symbols in there, but I've seen the new wing at the Orlando airport is much better themed to Disney than that is. I'm like, that's just not good. And the store too. My wife loves stores. We went into the creation shop, got our free magnet, went like this to look around, and just walked right out the door. I was like, there's nothing. And again, mouse gear, I was so much more. It was set up to inspire you to explore what's around.
It was welcoming. It
Yeah,
was
it felt
welcoming,
very
right?
homey. Yeah, this
Yeah.
just feels like the Disney department in Macy's
I
that
just
I'm
gonna
not
say,
interested in. I looked and I'm like, I can see from here. I don't want to see anything, and I just walked out. You know.
it's almost dystopian, when you walk through there with the mannequins having no faces and all that. It's just strange.
Well,
Uh,
anyway, the point of all that, and I know I talk about it a lot, is the Disney's new stuff doesn't have the. I can't imagine looking at that creation shop 30 years from now and being like, oh, they're going to change it. I can't believe it. It's like they're going to have to change it long before that. It's just terrible. It's not any, there's, it's just terrible.
it's not
I hate to
timeless.
say that. No, not at all. It's weird Mickey murals and Macy's. Like that's the two things combined. It's like, I just, and if that's the way the rest of that park's going to go, that's going to be scary. The future, or whatever you call it, the neighborhood part is just going to be the part to walk through to get to the World Showcase, I guess. But I can also tell you that the World Showcase part, it lost a lot with the without the illuminations feel too. Like I look at my videos from the Illuminations era, and it had such a vibe there at night, and now there's no vibe at all. I walked through it last night, and I was like, all right, we're ready to leave. It's like it's all right. That nothing really. It used to be a lot of special stuff there that was just nice being around. And again, maybe this is special for the new generation, but I have a feeling it's not, because like I noticed the music walking in yesterday. It's not bad, but it's not memorable.
Hmm.
If I heard it right now, I wouldn't think, oh, Epcot. I would think, yeah, that sounds vaguely familiar. I don't know. It's like,
Hmm.
and again, that music they played before, there was just something about that. It made you feel good, positive, the future, like it was like epic future Epcot music. It was just amazing. And it's like now, I don't know. It's all right. The new theme is let's untheme it and make it just okay. Don't go too far. Just it's all right. That's what they're aiming for. But again, I know this is supposed to be about influencers, but
Well, I
I
was just going to pivot back to that though about influencers. That this all ties together, right? I mean, what you're describing and the things that you're talking about, I think it's caused a mistrust in the influencers themselves because they go there, that Disney gives them all kinds of things and perks and says here's the story behind this, and you don't get that necessarily. But they go there, and the influencer in the modern day is just like, well, this is a great experience, or blah 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 blah, and in reality, it's not really the experience that they're describing. There's nothing fantastic about it. So when you go there and you check out Connections Cafe or, the Creation Shop, you see this weird dystopian looking thing. And, the influencer tried to make you feel like you're walking into the next generation of mouse gear. And it's just not the case.
well,
It gives distrust to the influencer. You
yeah,
don't trust them anymore.
I was going to say too, and just remember though that not all of them are getting free stuff. Like
You're right. Yeah.
I follow a lot of people. Oh, that's on your end. I thought my dogs had something. I I follow a lot of people that that actually work hard. They get out there, they do live streams, they're in the parks, they do it, and they don't get paid anything. They're just hustling trying to get there. So if you see somebody with their gimbal, don't automatically assume there's some obnoxious I get everything for free influencer. There's a lot of them out there that are just hardworking, good people and doing it with a job. And again, I do that too, but I do it a lot less. I used to go live around the parks and stuff, but again, the looks I get talking to my phone on a gimbal is not good anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm going to end up getting beat up in the parks, and they'll throw me out forever. He's in a fight. It's enough. He's out, So
He didn't
just,
go to New Orleans to experience the Tijuana thing.
and I was going
We're
to
gonna
say
throw him out.
too, my recent experience and past too, I could honestly say that I have very little interest in attending Disney events. Like, it's nice getting a lot of free stuff, but it comes along with a lot of stuff that you don't really want to do. So I'm not really interested in that. But I would absolutely positively love access to Epic Universe when that first opens up. I probably won't get it, but man, if I do, I don't think I'm going to have to lie because everything's going to be so new. All I got to do is show it to you because you've never seen it, And again,
Yeah.
I think everything will speak for itself. So that's my thing. If Disney has something real cool, I can give you a feel of it through video and pictures, but what I think of it really shouldn't matter too much to you.
But
If
isn't that
it's,
what the viewer actually wants? The viewer probably wants, to be able to experience it themselves. But if you're giving them a preview of it, they're just seeing what you're seeing through the lens, and you're giving them that point of view rather than telling them how great, a crappy steak actually isn't, is or isn't. So, I don't know. I prefer that sort
yeah,
of
but
thing, but
I think a lot of people don't though. So
I think you're right. But I do think that the influencers at this point in time are probably losing traction with,
yeah.
and you can see that in the views and the likes and things like that.
Well,
So,
here's the thing though too. The influencers, there's a pretty large section of hardcore Disney fans that love the parks. They follow everything that happens, whatever. I used to be one of those guys too. I still am,
mhm,
no point. I know everything that goes on, but I remember once in a while my wife would tell me something. She'd be like, "Oh, did you I saw they put something new in such and such ride or whatever." And every single time I'd be like, "Yeah, I know. I've already seen it because
mhm.
I watched the stuff." She doesn't really. She's more of a casual fan, and I really feel like many of the influencers are their main audience is the hardcore fans. Like, there's a new cake pop at the bakery on Main Street. Here's what it is. It costs $8.99. Look at it, and it's like, my wife's not going to look at that. I don't even want to look at that, but I mean, that's how far they go with content. Like, they are there every day, every single little thing new. But I was going to say, like, my followers aren't really like that. I have mostly casual. I have some hardcore fans too, but they're mostly casual vacationers. So it's just a different audience. But again, companies are not smart enough to know what they're looking for. They're like, wow, this person has a big following. It's like, they already follow you too. What's the difference? They
Yeah.
already follow Disney World. Just tell them what you want to tell them. Like I bet if you look at the overlap between like Disney Food Blog and the Disney parks, I bet it's almost 100%. Meaning they do have a lot of followers, but you don't need them at all. You already have 100% overlap. So.
Yeah.
But I literally, like I said, my audience is more of the. I was there a few years ago and liked it, so I like remembering stuff about it. I'd like to have another trip, like that kind of thing. So my audience is a little bit weird like that. They're spaced out vacationers instead of hardcore. I have every pair of Mickey ears. I go to the parks 14 times a year. People. So again, I don't know what the value of that is too. Maybe that's who. I don't
I
know.
don't
It's such
know.
a weird thing. The influencers influence the people who want to be influencers, I think, more than regular people. So
Yeah.
that's a,
Yes.
that's another weird thing.
Great point.
For Disney, there's such a big plethora of them that
Hmm.
And again, I want to reiterate, I'm not one.
I really think like if you look at what Disney needs as a market to make money, they need people like your customers because that's who they're going to be peeling away to come back every 2 years. They know their money. They're not making as much money off of you and I, who like me, I go to the parks, 14, 15 times a year with my annual pass. They're not making a ton of money off me. They're making some, not a ton. And I'm constantly trying to leverage my trip so that I can save money with my annual pass. Right. And you go there cause you're local and they're not making a lot off of you. So
No, that's not what they say at the California Grill. I went to the California Grill and
that's
spent
true.
$360 on dinner. Then I went downstairs and spent almost $500 on merchandise from the
Oh
store.
my gosh, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
They're making something on me.
That's true.
Oh, speaking of merchandise, 30% off for pass holders for June, I think. I don't know if it's the whole month, but we were surprised yesterday. My wife got a dress and it was 30% off. And you know what I want to tell you? The cast member literally told us, sweet girl, she said, that's more than I get. And I said, oh. And then my wife said, oh, are you a college program, huh? And she said, yeah, but I'm moving back to New York. This isn't worth it, And my wife was like, yeah, I know. I used to work here too. I was a cast member. And then she basically said she doesn't have any money. And my wife was like, yeah, what do they pay you for college program or whatever? And she got paid something. And again, I think it was like $14 an hour or something. But they give her however many hours they want, meaning small or a lot. And there's housing. And I think she said she pays like $200 and some a week and for housing that comes right out of her check. And she said if they don't, sometimes if she doesn't have the hours, her check is zero because it all went to housing. And then she owes the next month and she can't control the hours. She said, I'm moving back with my parents in New York. I can't take this anymore. I was like,
wow.
There you go. Disney's awesome. They treat their employees great. Like,
and that
running a company store, that college program is the biggest scam in history. I'm sure it's fun. Like, again, if I could go back in time, I would have done it, especially back in the 90s.
Me too.
That would have been awesome. But money-wise, it is a scam. It's like, we're going to jam you in this room with 12 other people and take most of your pay for that. And it's like, really? It's like, it's just such a weird thing. But again, they are lucky they have it because that's a big thing they profit from. But anyway, I haven't had my wife is good at getting the young people to talk to her. So she just starts talking to them, and then the next thing you know, they're telling her, oh, some weeks I get paid nothing, and then I owe Disney money. The next week they take even more out because I didn't make enough to cover what I owed them the last time. And I'm like, they should at least give these people hours. But
so that would be a great podcast.
For the end because I don't want too many people to hear it.
Yeah, that'd be a great podcast for if we could find someone who went through the college program. And it had to be recent because the prices of everything have gone up so dramatically down there and housing and everything. So,
like I said, if I had a time machine, it looked like a lot of fun to be a college program person.
Yeah,
but I don't know if it is now or not. I know. In the
not if you're starving.
In the mid '90s, I bet it would have been pretty awesome. I would have been living in a treehouse with 10 other people, but it would have been.
Oh, right, John. Where can they find you online?
You can find me at SeeWDW on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and CUO on Instagram and Instagram and Facebook. Yeah.
All right, and you can find me at The Giant Rat, THEE Giant Rat, on Instagram, on YouTube, on TikTok, and pretty much anywhere on Twitter.
And just remember, nothing against any of the influencers. I actually know a lot of them, and personally, and very good people. But I'm just saying, in general, people are starting to get more angry with influencers and people wanting to be influencers. And again, it's beginning to have the reverse effect. So,
yeah,
and it's not their fault, you know.
yeah.
If you're successful, you're going to have 1,000 people trying to be you, bumping in the kids in the park, knocking them over, trying to record themselves. And again, it's not your fault, but it's starting to get a little weird. And as far as believing it, I don't believe anybody paid to tell me something anymore. So
yeah, I agree. And again, some of these influencers, you see it more and more. Just to, back up what you said. Some of them are like actually having problems in the park with other people, right? So
yeah, I don't know.
it's
some of them, yeah. But again, it's sad when it's the ones that do it for free because they just like the interaction and stuff. And as a side note to that, all through the pandemic stuff, I continued to post every day, and I posted live from the parks as soon as they reopened. And I can't tell you how many people that told me that thank goodness I was there. I made their day. I made their week. I was the high point of the day that they saw what I posted. And I did not make a dime through any of that. But I did it because I literally would get a smile on my face when I'm reading that. I would look, I would get a smile thinking that there was some depressed person locked in their house somewhere thinking the world is a terrible place. And then I say, look, I'm at Disney. Look, it's still here. Everything's beautiful. And, the notes I would get about that really helped. That's probably a big reason I'm still doing it today. That you get addicted to that, people actually making strangers happy across the world. That was really cool. I don't get it as much now because everything's back, but it was a special time for me to help people. So anyway,
all right, perfect.
Not all influencers are trying to get something.
Agreed. And I remember when you did that, and I remember how warm it made you feel.
If you want to advertise anything, send it to me.
Especially Epic Universal.
Oh, yeah.
All right. That should do it for this one. We will see you on the next one.